electricity. This I don't know what the Septuagint is. Do you know what that is?
It's the first 7 books of the Bible that were written by Moses.
Oh, okay. I've never heard that word before. Translate hashmal into
Oh no, that's the Pentateuch.
a word that means amber in English, and then it says Francis Bacon coined the English word electricity because so there's this Greek word, I guess, electron, that they have translated hashmal into, which means amber in English.
Right.
And then it says Francis Bacon coined the English word electricity to describe the static electric effect of rubbing amber with cloth.
Right.
And then later, hashmal became the modern Hebrew word that translates to the English word electricity.
Huh.
And that's the word for this category of angels that Zakiel is the head of. I wanted to read that all that.
That brings in Twin Peaks.
Yes! Oh, yes! Yes!
We're now in David
Yes!
Lynch's
Yes!
world.
Yes! I love that rhyme. I've been waiting for that to happen.
Oh, that's too much.
It's so good.
I'm happy.
Oh, that's it. So I think
Sometimes
I'm gonna burst the blood vessel.
sometimes Kenny points to an outlet. So
Thanks
then
for
it's
how those.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah.
Go kill all those
Thank
guys
you.
over there.
Which makes sense because Gene Wolfe's an engineer. He's like a,
Yeah.
you know, I feel like he's gonna see that. He's gonna be like, what the fuck is this stuff in the wall? Like,
Yeah. All right, that's good. That's a nice moment.
Another note on this chapter. I love that Severian's looking for the green room.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah,
funny.
that is definitely a
And
joke.
I love
Yeah, because he's about to put on a play.
Yeah, it's fucking hilarious. That
the green room.
It's
you
so,
know,
but then it is a green room.
It
It's a room made out of living trees. It's like one.
But the
It's
term,
an awesome
the term
joke.
has survived like since,
Yeah,
since
it rules.
now.
It's so
It
funny.
kind of feels like I feel
So
like
funny.
Yeah.
there's some little bit of stuff in the chapter that I feel like is kind of like touring band jokes.
A little bit.
Oh, yeah?
And, like the relationship between the characters, like the way when he comes back upon the troupe. And the way that they deal with each other is such a fucking on-tour family.
When they're
dealing out the money after each show, like
Yeah.
This is Gene Wolfe's Get in the Van.
Yeah.
Oh, so all the tents are like, it's like INC.
Yeah.
He
And the
hasn't
people
been on tour
screaming,
with the
like,
rest
it's
of
like
the people,
total
so while
chaos.
everybody
Yeah.
else is setting up, he sneaks away with the vapid girl to
Oh.
cheat on his girlfriend.
Who's been bored because they're like she's bored
Because
all
she's
these-
too delicate to do anything.
all
She
the guys
doesn't-
that want to
No,
start
she
hitting on our
gets
scrubs.
swarmed all the time.
Well,
It
that's
is like-
also true.
It's
Scrubs,
Oh,
dude. The
it's not
the
scrubs.
primary. I feel like one of the big things about being a woman on tour is like the dudes that are hitting on you are not they're not viable partners.
Right.
Like the fans or whatever.
Yeah,
that are
it's not
coming
gonna
up
work.
and hitting on you at the merch table. It's like no, we are different species.
Yeah.
I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Come bite.
And white girls in bands always hook up with the guys in the opening acts.
No, I mean, you're right.
I don't see it in the text, but I do,
It is, and that's what Severian is. He's like
It's
not one.
fascinating. I don't think that Gene Wolfe has ever been on tour. I really don't think he has.
I mean, maybe a book tour.
He
but
goes to different Comic-Cons.
Maybe he
book
had a
tours are way
friend.
different. So
he hasn't
I
been
really
in
think he's a
anything I want
70s
to.
sci-fi guy. He maybe had a friend who was in.
I mean, we already decided that he's done peyote.
Yeah.
I
well, I mean,
lost
it's this.
Or-
It fits.
I mean, they're this traveling show, so I mean, like there's like whatever like literary context for that kind of thing. I mean, we've definitely lived in like a modern sort of context, but it's I don't know. I think like there's something there for him to like grab
A
onto.
book tour.
Dude,
a
can
book
I-
tour would never have like 4 people.
No,
acting.
I mean that like traveling circuses and plays and stuff like that's not an uncommon thing that happens in literature. Like I just read a book like last month that has
Oh,
a
yeah, I remember
traveling
that.
Station
Can I
11
just
as
say-
a traveling circus.
Oh,
Jolenta not
Or
carrying
traveling-
any of
a
the
traveling
gear
Is it-
is such
it's
a
good?
thing.
It is good.
Everyone likes it. I
Yeah,
want
it
to
is
read it.
I love it when
Everyone
the
likes
author finally just breaks down straight up laughs at him. Because he's just like, all right, I'm gonna show you this really cool thing. And then he's like, oh my god, yeah, I'm your slave now. And he's like, right, cool, well.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I love the whole thing.
Good.
And then he's like, wait, but I just want to go to the green room. Why did you do that? I just wanted a map, and you had to show me this weird thing.
Butterfly.
And then he's like trying to pull out his sword, and he's like, "Does Votalist say you're supposed to kill me?" And the Autarch at that point is just like,
Dude.
"Oh my god!" Like you're wound the fuck up. and then he says, "You asked this part is just so good. You asked me for a light for your candle, and I tried to give you the sun, and now you're burnt.
Yeah.
The fault was mine. I sought perhaps to postpone my time, yet even so I would not have let you travel so far had I not read in the message that you have carried the claw." So, do you think when he's saying postpone my time, is he saying like, well shit, it's time for me to pass this shit on to you, but I feel like I'm not ready yet, and I was trying
Maybe
to...
I'll blow your mind a little bit.
I feel like-
take longer.
Oh, you mean like the guy
Very
in the story?
And that's why he's saying, like, I tried to light your candle, but I gave you the sun. It's because, you know, like, you're just a little baby candle.
yeah.
And you have to be the fucking sun.
So
Yeah.
the Autarch is the student, and Severian is the dream boy.
Or
Yeah,
Father
yeah.
Rhaenyra, or Father
Yeah,
Rhaenyra
Father
is
Rhaenyra
the
is
student.
Yeah, I mean, they're a team, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the Autarch is like this scene happening between them and like Father Rhaenyra and him. Like Father Rhaenyra is just like that the bent over dude who doesn't even get named in this segment.
Yeah, super interesting.
Yeah, I feel like it's like he's drawing a. We've done a jump from like that story, student, dream boy, to this conversation.
I think
Yeah.
so.
Do you think? So did he like? Are you suggesting that the Autarch was like when Severian said, "Can I see the garden?" That he's like, "Shit, you're ready." That's why he was surprised. Like, "Oh, you want to do that now? All right, let's go. Let's do it." Do you think?
Maybe. I
But
don't
maybe
know.
postponing
It was a
time
test, I
implies
don't know.
not. I guess.
I
Maybe-
don't think necessarily. I don't really 100% understand why you make the connection between him asking about the garden and what the Autarch does. Because to me, there's no connection between that. In my mind,
I
it's
see.
like
Where's
that's like Severian's weird quest is to find Dorcas or whatever.
Because
Because that's the only thing he cares about at this particular.
Wait, let me
moment.
see.
And
Maybe
then
I.
the Autarch is gonna like.
Wait, I'm trying to read. I might have it wrong because because this is show me where the garden was. Can you show me where the garden is? This is page 334. I sensed that once he had been caught off guard for the first time in many years, possibly for the first time. There was pain in his eyes, and his left hand moved towards the vial at his throat, which is the thing that he drinks to become the Autarch. So you have heard of that. Even supposing that I knew the way, why should I reveal it to you? Many will seek to flee the low pelagic argosy, blah, blah, blah.
There's a lot going on in that little moment.
Okay. So like in the play, we get the garden at the end of the world connecting back to the garden at the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's like that is maybe the code. I mean, Severian's told the code that the person's going to say to him, and Autarch has clearly been told the code that the person's going to say to you is about the garden.
Yeah.
But and maybe the reason they have the person talking about the garden, like the code he says back is like Abaya is coming back to land, and the code that triggers that is we're looking for the garden. We need to get back to the beginning end of humanity. We need to get back to Meshia and Meshian's home.
I think that instead of, or in addition to that, I think that the garden is Zadkiel's home. I think that's where Earth's representative goes to be judged. And that is why he's like, oh,
That
it's time to-
planet or that
Well, yeah, because he says, "Come
If
and I will."
planet it
or
be.
whatever that like.
He says, "Come and I will show you the way to the garden, though I am by no means sure you will be permitted to enter."
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Which is exactly like, yeah, I can make you Autarch so that you can go stand judgment.
Oh right.
But like, I fucking failed.
What would have been the situation if he was prepared? Would he step through that mirror there and talk to Zadkiel? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what was the Autarch like thinking in that moment? Like, I'll show you this.
Oh, I think he was gonna make a Montauk in that moment.
How? Oh,
Give
with the
him
vial.
Yeah.
How would Severian have demonstrated, besides not being a dumbass, that he was ready? You know what I mean? Like,
I
what
think if he
changed?
looked at Zadkiel and his forehead didn't bleed.
And you think, and
Yeah.
so in that moment, the author
Your
sees that
brain
and is like, oh, we're talking about something else right
Yeah,
now.
you got a
Yeah.
ways to go.
Okay.
Your brain can't even start to
Okay.
deal with his job.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to
Right.
like, yeah, you just told me you'd be my slave. Because of a fact of the
Right.
butterfly,
Yeah.
which is just out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. But with that mirror there that he showed him in that book, like, would Severian, if he was ready, be able to like be like, okay, I'm going to like take this and go and commune with it or something? Like you know what I mean?
I don't know what would have happened. I
What
don't
would've-
think that's what would have happened because of what happens later on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious if there was a communicative like capability there between Zadkiel and whoever's looking through that mirror at that moment.
I mean, possibly, right? They are mirrored. Like,
They're looking at each other.
presumably, you can travel through that book.
Mm-hmm. Oh, P.S. What is the like glass table in that room?
Oh, it's like a
Microscope.
magnifying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they just
Yeah, that thing
put
was
it
cool.
underneath that, and there's like a light above it.
Yeah.
It's like a lamp. Okay.
It's like a.
Oh, I think the light is just the screen turning on. Or something. Like, it's the surface that they're viewing the magnification. That's what I thought the light was that it was like a screen.
I thought it might just be like a light table.
Like a magnifying glass
Yeah, like
with
a-
a light above it.
Or
That's what it
or
was.
underneath it.
Or-
Oh, I figured
It
it
could
was
be
like
a
digital.
Yeah, it could
I mean,
easily be
I think it's
screen,
open to
yeah.
all those things.
Yeah, it's some level of technology, but
It could also just be completely a misreading by Severian, and the light table is just like a computer terminal, and it's a USB thing that he's plugged in there.
Yeah.
There's no magnification.
Totally.
Right.
Right. That's.
Which I think,
kind of one.
yeah.
oh yeah, no, maybe. I mean, Jeets had.
Well, he's not going to be able to describe a
portable
computer.
storage
He's not going to
already,
be able
so-
to describe a computer
Totally.
right.
in any remote.
Oh, because he sees the cube, remember? In
Yeah,
the
there's
library that had the
portable storage.
cube.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like,
That contains
Yeah.
more books than the entire library.
yeah. They also, I guess this is jumping ahead a little bit, but they mention, just like to talk about like, computers and shit, they mentioned that Dorcas, like, taking out the solar panels to work the projector for the
Yeah.
play.
Oh yeah, the projectors and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was like such a play that would be put on by people we know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Also,
Donna.
should we talk about the play?
Yeah.
No, wait.
Or are
Well,
we
that's
jumping
different.
ahead?
That's
Are we
the thing.
jumping
We haven't
ahead?
done 22, which I
about
think.
that.
I feel like the play might need its own.
I
Yeah,
kind of
we-
think the play might
There's a
need its
ton in
own
the
thing.
play.
Yeah.
Which is the only
we
reason I
discussed
mentioned
doing
it.
doing like a reading.
I don't know if
of the
I'm
play.
ready.
No. Next time, I think we should start with a reading and then talk about the play.
Yeah.
We should read
We
it.
should
and then
do
talk
the
about
play.
Yeah,
Let's
we should get
Yeah.
up to the play.
We're gonna do
That's
like-
what I think. I
Okay.
think we should do the play next
We should
time.
do the
I
play.
agree.
I always
We
read
should
the
start.
play again before I can talk about
Yeah.
it.
Me too.
Yeah. The only reason I mentioned it is because there is a lot to talk about.
Exactly.
But
Yeah,
there's-
I think we should start a meeting with the play.
Okay.
Yeah.
So should we have another, sorry, let's
Yeah.
talk about it later.
Yeah.
That
Well,
said, I think you could say something about it though in anticipation, like if you had something interesting.
Well,
to say.
I just mean, should we have another meeting very soon where we only talk about the play and don't read any other chapters?
And do the play.
There's
I do
so
the
much.
play.
There's so little left in this book. I think
Yeah.
we should knock this book out, do play, and then the rest of the book, and then.
Yeah.
In the same meeting?
We'll be able to
Alright.
talk. Yeah.
Because there's not that many. I don't even think there's 8 chapters
I
left.
think
Yeah.
there's
No, there's not.
Yeah,
But
it's like
in part of it,
30
we have to
pages,
talk
20
about
pages.
Opportunity.
Yeah, oh
I feel
shit.
like I will talk about that.
There's a,
Are we at personifications now?
Oh,
Yes.
and I believe that I could chat with
20.
I
Right.
have a lot to say about this chapter.
Go off.
Which?
Well, there's what about hydromancy before
That
we
was
get to the-
we were just.
I think we just talked about
Well,
That's the
was-
fountain chapter?
Yeah, the fountain. We didn't talk
Do you
about
wanna-
Oh, yeah.
There's more
yeah.
to it. You're right.
The fountain.
Because he goes out into the garden.
And the fountain is dead right. There's the rod and the chair and the towers signify being king
Mm-hmm.
of the Nessus.
Of
Many
the- of
pointed
the world.
star growing ever larger.
Have we talked
Oh,
about
the
the big sculptures? Is there something
Oh,
to that?
those weird statues.
Mhm.
Is there something to that? Like
Are they machines?
I don't know. They're
I
just like,
tried so hard to
they-
like look up anything anyone's written
are they
about that, and I just
sentinels?
can't
Are they
find anything
guardians?
about
Are they
it.
just like decorations? Like, are they like, do they do anything?
They seem to be threatening.
Yeah, he like,
Yeah, but
or he's
he-
like
He's
intimidated
threatened
by
by them.
He
yeah.
can be scared of
Something
some shit
happens
that
with them
doesn't mean to be
later
scared
too,
of, though,
Well,
easily.
right? Or does someone get hurt by one later? In like the third book or something.
I always feel like they're in the background just being menaced.
Yeah, well, and he talks about them as statues, but I think when we first see them, it's not that they're actually like these static beings. It's not like a moving bust or anything. He just compares. He says like every time you look at them or something, it looks as if they could be a statue, like as if they could have been in that position.
Well, they move very
forever.
slowly, right?
Yeah, the
Which is
second
weird
time
that
they
he's
show up,
intimidated
he-
by them because
he
they're
talks
like
about it,
they can't
yeah.
chase you really, right? I mean, they're just like
He said they're too slow to be alive.
yeah,
They're moving, but
but they are.
you know they're not alive by their speed.
Do you think they're like just working on another time?
I was about to say that. Maybe
Absolutely
they're like
possible.
Yeah.
traveling in a
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah,
Kind of like ants.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a giant leap, but maybe they're traveling at a different time rate, so they're the things that protect the fourth dimensional barriers of the House Absolute.
Ooh.
Like they are the barrier. This is the shape that the barrier takes between
Mhm.
the House Absolute and normal space.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like that leap.
It's a
Yeah, we
giant
like
leap.
Yeah,
It's good. That's a good
cool
one.
idea.
Well, they're giant guys.
Or yeah. There's they would have to
But
be-
they don't seem like they can leap very high.
No.
Right, like in another like they have like a foot
Not
in
in
several or one at least two dimensions, and that they like in the other dimension they're actually like moving faster. But
Or
in
normal
this
speed.
one,
Or
Yeah.
or don't move at all. Like
Right.
maybe that's just the shape of the barrier as it moves through the fourth dimension that we only see the cross section of it looks like
yeah,
a human being moving incredibly slowly.
yeah,
Whoa.
awesome.
It's like
Hell
it's like
yeah.
this
Write it out. Make your own
Right,
story.
right.
That's cool.
It's
See-
like the opposite of the speed force, the slow force.
I just always think about. I keep thinking about those guys that were shit talking like you can't read these books unless you're like obsessed with the Bible. And it's like they don't think about all this shit.
Yeah,
We got shit they don't got.
exactly.
That's
A
right.
lot of it.
That's right.
That's all I gotta say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know everything. I don't know.
You know what I realized is
You
that
gotta notice
like,
nerds.
Mark Armini's name is really perfectly suited to.
Mark Aramini.
Is it's
A
like yeah,
taunt.
Mark Aramini is a good old man, you know, or Mark Aramini was a good old man.
What?
You know that little rhyme about Abraham Lincoln
No.
I don't know.
about how he was a good old man. You
Are
never
you
heard that?
comparing Mark Armini to Abraham Lincoln?
Well, I'm just saying his name fits in that little song. Though,
I mean, like sort of overrated.
you know the song where he jumps out the window?
No.
You guys don't know this song?
No.
Can you perform it?
Yeah. Should I do the Abraham Lincoln
Yes.
original or the Mark Aramini? remix?
Both. No, Mark Aramini.
Okay,
Do that one.
Yeah, I don't care about the.
You guys are. I'm
We
sure,
can fill in it.
When I say it, you'll remember it. It's the one about him jumping out the window. It's what? Mark Aramini was a good old man. He jumped out the window with his dick in his hand.
No.
And then there's another part about like somebody's booty and doing my duty.
No. So it's not. Did this happen?
I thought you were gonna do like an old limerick.
I know. Did he do this?
No, this
It's
is
like
just
a
a dumb
schoolyard
rhyme for
limerick.
idiots.
You guys never heard that story about Abraham Lincoln?
I
No.
A
So-
schoolyard story.
That
So-
is talking about him.
Like Sugar Hill.
He
What?
was a good old man and he jumped out the window with his dick in his hand. I think it's because he's escaping like
Why did Abraham-
a situation of adultery.
Oh.
Yeah, like Abraham Lincoln's like doing somebody else.
So he didn't get his ass split up. He had to jump out the window with his dick in his
Jefferson
hand.
Davis'
Yeah.
wife's booty.
Yeah.
It's a poem about
There was-
Abraham Lincoln.
there was a
It
second
Jefferson
couple.
Davis' wife.
But it rhymed booty and dude.
I didn't think Abraham
Sure,
Lincoln
why
would
not?
do that.
Has anybody seen that Mark Armini has been in the national news in a strange way?
Stop.
What?
Pizzagate?
I know.
I'm sorry, that wasn't okay.
You only know about it if you're friends with Mark Armini on Facebook. But so his college professor his college professor was friends with Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, Buttigieg.
Yeah, so he's been talking about how like I know this man is an actually good decent man a lot on Facebook and like
What did
What, the
Buttigieg?
Marconi caucus?
it's some connection through his college professor that like Mayor Pete was friends with that guy or studied with the guy or something like that. It's some connection
From
with
Indiana?
something. Huh?
Is he from Indiana?
I don't know.
I Buttigieg went to
Wait,
Harvard.
but so why
And Mayor
is
Pete's running for
Aramini in the
president.
news then?
It's not. It's just Aramini's like I
Yeah.
know this guy who's running for
Oh,
president.
you just said
commenting
set that up by saying Aramini.
You said he was
in
the
the
Yeah,
news.
I want to try to make the story sound really cool and fun, so we all get excited.
So by the news, you just mean the
Thank you.
Facebook news feed?
yeah, there's no news. Where do I get my news?
Your personal news.
Yes, my news. This is my news that I've brought to you.
Thank you, Connor.
You're welcome.
I like the story.
Thank
It was a good.
I felt
Have you seen Emma in the news? It's all over Twitter.
I mean, don't think that I didn't know what I was doing.
I don't know.
Are we on personifications yet?
Yes.
Oh, all right.
No, 'cause- yes.
No, we're
No,
not.
let's talk about
Yeah.
Dorcas.
Dorcas.
He's the best.
This
love,
conversation rules.
I love Dorcas's speech about privilege. It's so awesome. And it's so weird to read it in this old book. Because I feel like her dream and her speech is like, I don't know, is exactly, I feel like some of the feelings that happen when we talk about privilege. It's like people see this foul specter, and I am the foul specter, but I'm also other things too. And the fact that the chapter's called personifications. It's
Ryan,
so
do you have
weirdly
that?
relevant.
Do you have that handy? Where she gets her main?
I think
343.
Read it to us. Recitation.
You can if you want to.
Oh yeah, I didn't mean to sound so.
Yeah, it's 343.
She's trying to buy tiny clothes.
Tiny clothes.
No.
Dorcas held her small white hands half a span apart. Doll's clothing, perhaps. I particularly remember little shirts of fine wool. Oh yeah. At least I chose one and hand the old man money. But it is not money at all, only a lump of filth. So she's describing her dream right now.
Yeah.
She's shaking. I want to scream, then, that they are wrong, that I am no foul spectre that they take me for. Yet I know that if I do, whatever I must say will be taken as the final proof that they are right. And the words choke me. The worst part is that just then, the hissing of the thread stops. I know that no one could understand who has not had the same dream, but it is terrible, terrible. So she's like haunted by it. But that's not necessarily privilege there, or is it?
I mean, I think it continues a little bit
Yeah.
on 344 and 345, where it gets even deeper into that part of the theme.
People don't want other people to be people. That whole thing is
Yeah.
really cool.
So it's like a bad faith.
Yeah. And I mean, like,
being reduced to.
Yeah, people. The way she explains it is so neat. Where she's
Yeah.
like, "You're a torturer, but you could change your job," and he's like, "I don't want to." He's like, "Yeah, but it's possible."
Right.
Well, yeah, and just the idea that people outside of you are putting your meaning on you or whatever. But I think it seems to me like her point in saying that to him is like, you're the new son. People are calling you death because they don't want that shit.
Right.
But you are actually life. Don't get it twisted. Like, they're wrong.
Yeah.
You're not death. You're only death if to them because they want to buy it to win.
How
Right.
fucking grandmotherly.
Yeah.
In
Yeah,
such
she's
an
like, you're
amazing way.
such a great
Yeah.
little boy, and you're gonna be so strong someday.
And
Oh my God! Like when I met Kenny's grandma, and when he went to the bathroom, and she said, "You've got a good boyfriend." Oh. Yeah, she loved him.
Kenny's a nice boy.
She loved him so much.
a grandmother can overturn like the order of the world without it seeming like strange or revolutionary. Like it seems like common sense, you know?
Because to be fair, Severian is death for everyone who is living in that world.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's part of what the play is about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's how a new world is born.
Right.
You know, people aren't safe. They're burnt to ashes and leave mold.
Or drowned in this case.
Yeah.
But she's
Oh, yeah,
like,
okay,
I'm
still
trying to get you work you out of the idea that you are like an ending because you're actually a beginning,
Right.
and like everyone's trying to tell you you're an ending all the time.
Yeah.
Like, don't listen to it.
And the irony of Dorcas being called Innocence is that she's
Right.
an old soul.
Exactly.
She's
Yeah.
got this perspective you can only get from being old.
Exactly.
It's so good. And then, like, it's almost like I feel like this chapter ends with both of them laughing, like almost like, "Yep, I'm deaf, and you're innocent," and they're both like, they're both so tickled.
Yeah.
Oh, also, the thing where she is talking about Dr. Talos and Baldanders, I was wondering if because obviously what's happening is she's kind of doing a Jonas thing too, because she's kind of like slowly over time remembering more shit. You have to assume that, right? She's slowly over time remembering more shit
Yeah.
about her old life. Like, she's like Jonas. Like, it's all kind of like starting to come back, and she's putting things in context. And like, my question based on that is, do you think she knows who Baldanders is at this point? Or she's like I know about the, like, or she thinks she might know who it, like.
Wait, why would you think she would know who Baldwin is?
I don't know, like maybe Baldanders and Dr. Talos have a bigger reputation. Well, like, you know, their home got burned down. Like, maybe
Yeah.
it's kind of
Well,
a thing, like, and they've
he has a
been
reputation with the
they've been
people.
through the city a few times, and like, hard to say what that time span is like.
And what from the reading makes you think that she knows?
Well,
Baldwin?
she's like, do you think Dr. Talos is Baldander's son? She's like, what do you really know about their past? Like, what?
Oh, I always just read that as how she's perceptive and Severian doesn't.
It could be that. It's interesting to think, because like, Severian just doesn't have, like, think of him as someone who didn't have cable when he was growing up.
I didn't have cable when I was.
But you know what I
Me
mean?
neither.
Who but do you feel like when you would talk with other kids, like they would be like, "What about this stupid show?" And you'd be like, "What are you talking about?"
Yes, definitely.
So like that, do you think that's kind of like a way to think about Severian, where like maybe the idea that Baldanders and Talos might have a bigger reputation, he has no conception of it at all.
Totally.
Like, why would he?
Totally.
It's so cool the way I feel like he lays out, or he like sort of halfway gives us what's going on with Baldanders and Talos here. It's so cool.
Yeah. Well,
Like the father-son thing it's like, it's not right, but it is.
Yeah.
It's so neat.
yeah, I do think that I agree with Connor that I think it was just like she's picking up on stuff, and she realizes there's a different, because it's the same thing where Rudson's like, yeah, the old hand's far away or whatever. Where like he's just still, and like the fountain, like he's still just like refusing to get it. Even he could probably watch them and be like, oh yeah, Talos is kind of some like below, yeah, exactly, below Baldanders, you know. But he's just refusing to look at it and like actually watch their relationship. Where Dorcas is like, yeah, she's way more thoughtful
What
and
about
deliberate
this
about
bit?
stuff.
What about this bit that like I'm just reading it now here, and Dorcas is like, I once heard Baldander say that he seldom lied, and then and then Dorcas responds. Severian said that. In his own way, I said, Baldanders is right. Dr. Talos doesn't lie the way other people understand lying. Calling you deaf wasn't a lie, it was a metaphor, I suggested. But it was a dangerous, bad metaphor, says Dorcas, and it was aimed at you like a lie.
It's fake news.
Yeah.
It's like it's manipulation of a narrative. It's a narrative manipulation. It's not a lie. It's just you're looking at it the wrong way.
Is Dr. Talos like why is Dr. Talos trying to manipulate Severian in
Well,
such a way?
okay, so on the side of Abaya, right, you've got Vodalis, Baldanders, and Dr. Talos are on that side. They don't want the new sun. They're not down. Why are they into Severian? I don't know. There's more than one person in this situation who knows who Severian is.
Is Talos
also
involved? Is Talos and Baldanders involved in trying to manipulate Severian's psychology? Like, are they trying to lie to him?
I think so.
that's what I'm saying.
I think that
Okay.
they knew exactly where he's going to be at all times.
Yeah, why else would they keep popping up? What they're like keeping tabs. They're like, they're part of this.
Every time they
scene.
make plans, variants like they're like, okay, we've made those plans. I specifically won't do that thing, and then they meet up with him anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why Baldater says that in that section. He's like, yeah, well, we met back up. Because Cimmerian's like,
He's like, why don't you wait for me?
and he's like, but you said we were gonna meet up later, even though I wasn't really gonna meet up with you anyway.
Right.
And then he's like, well, we met up, right?
It's
like,
here we are.
Yeah.
And the only one who picks up on this is Dorcas,
Yeah, she's like,
this
what's
is some
these?
whack bullshit.
What are these dudes'
Yeah.
deal
And Severian's
exactly?
just like,
do you know?
cool.
I feel like that whole metaphor
And he's like,
thing
Dr. Talos is nice to me.
also works on the level of if we're talking about privilege.
Uh-huh.
Like, it's not a lie,
Yeah.
but it's like you are becoming a personification for something that's not an individual situation.
My personal definition of privilege is the amount of free will an individual has, which is generally related to the amount of material wealth that they have. Like, people often argue.
That's a crazy term to give that.
Well,
Yeah,
people
that's
often
really
argue.
intense.
Well, sometimes in like discussions, people like to say like, "Oh, privilege is like a whack, irrelevant like term," like privilege, whatever. But and then some people say like, "Oh, privilege doesn't exist." Some people say like free will doesn't exist or does exist. I think free will does kind of exist in our world, but it's a byproduct of the material
It's true.
privilege.
The less privilege you have, the
And
more
the less-
self-determination you have.
Well, the less
Okay.
privilege you have, the more the outside world impresses your role
Right.
on you, in my opinion.
Right, but you're also like when you view it that way, I feel like you're doing a Dr. Talos thing because you're saying that like material conditions are the main overriding driving factor of a person's fate or personality or circumstance. Which
I
is,
don't think that absolutely. I just think it tends to statistically work that way.
But the
Yeah,
function
and
in a discussion is basically to say like this vector of looking at a human being is the primary one. And that everything else is sort of like a detail that is added to that story.
Yeah.
When those stories are parallel.
Yeah.
Like you have a foul specter in you, and like not everything else isn't like a one of the foul specter's handmaidens. Like you also have other specters. And I think like that's the thing that gets lost in the public conversation about privilege is that we're talking about personifications and not people.
Well, it's reduction to a facticity, that's the bad faith argument. Like it's always just like a reduction of another person who contains multitudes to a point of information.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it depends on how we define like free will.
Yeah, I feel like when you use that phrase, you're opening up like a bunch of doors.
Right, for sure. And I guess I just mean it like somewhat like practically, I guess. Like the ability to like go to
Move
another
around.
country.
It's
and,
self-determination.
Like walk around and get a job doing, exactly what you want to do.
But I think that is
but-
partially like going back to the fucking. I think this was at the House Azure. Is like your conception of the people above you is this gigantic romantic squashing of all of the people above you. That's really not based on anyone's actual experience. I think that's kind of happening here, where you go like someone with someone who's born into a family with wealth has this ability to go to Italy when they want to, or Malta, or whatever. But that does like that really has nothing to do with free will, like George W. Bush.
I
He
know what
doesn't
you
have
mean.
free will.
I agree. Yeah, I think. Yeah. We're having like parallel discussions, but I do agree with what you're adding to that. But
And
but
they're like
also, I mean, like an individual, the life of an individual born into extreme poverty versus the life of someone born into extreme wealth just often play out differently, and that the ability that one can have a thought and sort of use that thought to change like their realities tends to be more available to this person.
Sartre talks about this idea of like it's sort of infinite possibility. Like anything could happen for anyone, but there's the coefficient of adversity. So like
you mean like is it like the whole like if you're in a jail cell you can still like bang your head on the wall and kill yourself?
Yeah, it's like there's always a way. There's potentially a way to get to any end, but the means are going to be that coefficient of adversity is going to be different for any person. So like a person who's born into poverty has a much greater coefficient of adversity to like getting to Malta for a vacation or something, which doesn't mean that it's not possible.
Right.
But it means that they're going to have to go up against a lot more.
And it also means though that the coefficient of adversity is like a polyvalent, multifarious shifting
Oh yeah,
thing
there's
for each person.
and
too.
it's a fully subjective.
And what
thing.
happens in our argument, or like the public argument, is that is a fixed number.
Right.
That's a fixed number that everyone's ranked. That there's an order to those numbers. That there's like these people, like this group will go before this group in the power rankings of the hierarchy of oppression. But when it has to be like this person born in poverty as a coefficient of what is it, the
coefficient of adversity.
Of adversity for going to Malta, but then you put another condition that that same person is born in and another goal, and you've got a whole different situation.
Yeah.
And so calling it free will is, I guess I just feel like there's so many circumstances that also bind people besides money.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, and free will doesn't exactly maybe make sense. It doesn't. Yeah.
I think George W. Bush.
I would think about it as like
poster
self-determination
reference in my mind.
more so than like. I think free will is this like metaphysical.
Personally, I don't
implication.
believe in self-determination though, and that might be like a difference. Like,
But you have a level of self-determination as somebody with means that you
that
wouldn't
humans
have.
that humans have.
Right.
Yeah. Like a desire.
I mean, it's sort of like a functional, like a utility kind of like way of making decisions for yourself, as opposed to this greater like metaphysical free will, which I think exists separately from this sort of like day-to-day ability to make decisions for yourself.
Yeah.
I'm not totally sure how this fits in, but I know that it's related in that. So when right now we're talking about on a totally material plane of like I was not born into a family with money, so I can't go to Malta. But on a not material plane, which is a large part of life, larger part of life, that's not a rule. Like I would say, for instance, like where we're sitting right now is a demonstration of sort of a contrary trend out of sight of the physical world, where if we had a lot of money and investors or like the city was involved in paying for this theater, we would have so much less self-determination, or even if it was all our money, like the level of like keeping up that level, if we had a bunch of money started in here, we'd have to continue to maintain that, which would affect the decisions that are made about the programming put on here and the way the place was run.
Right.
And
but even like we are just in like a, even talking about using like the ruler is like running like a theater space, like we've already achieved like a great place in our lives that isn't like,
right, but you're back on the material.
Yeah.
Like I guess, in my feeling that when you're an artist and you're creating things, like your material is parallel to your specter of the symbolic and the creative that you work with.
Yeah.
And that like you can have and I think that we're just a really good example of how those things play out in on vectors that aren't material. That like, the people like, and you see with bands, it's really easy to see. I feel like one of the great functions of bands is to be able to see these like really stupid little simplified versions of problems that occur everywhere, and that like as a band becomes more successful, the choices they can really make, or that would not be considered insane, go, diminish at every step.
No money, no problems.
Yeah.
There's also the grandpa.
As
I think what you're trying to say is
That's what we.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
We could quote Mace more often in this.
There's also the Uncle Ben principle of with great power comes great responsibility. So that the more free will you have, the more privilege you have, the more you
no
you have
less
to use that.
oblige.
Right.
Yeah, the more you're beholden to the masses.
Which is a naive rule, but
Yeah.
it created Spider-Man.
Also, people that
It's
aren't
fun
rich
games.
or famous like don't get Me Too'd.
That aren't.
Or at least not to the same degree.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Like I feel like that's an interesting way that things get in. That
Like relative anonymity provides some kind of security.
Like, I guess unrelated, but my boss at work, makes like $150,000 a year.
Nice.
And her husband makes like millions. So
Wow.
So lives a different life, but
So
it's
she's just making
interesting.
the sweatpants money.
But when I
Yeah.
but when I talk to her, you know, it's like, what did you do over the weekend? Like, I went out for dinner and we watched like a movie or something. I'm like, you're fucking millionaires. You can do anything,
Yeah.
but their imaginations are not developed in such a way that they know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it's like nobody.
Quit
like,
your job,
it
bitch!
well, there's a limitation to how like. There's a certain
What the
point
fuck?
with money where it's like you're not going to be able to do something different than anybody else with it. Like
absolutely.
you can, like whatever.
Well,
Jeff Bezos
also-
can end homelessness,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't make a difference to him.
Yeah.
Like,
It's also, I think that the need to amass money is a mental illness.
Yes.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that it begets itself. Like, once you're like in the six-figure bracket or whatever, I would imagine is probably when that starts to kind of like hit really
Yeah.
hard,
I think
or maybe like upper five.
there's a number.
Where
There's a
you're
number
like-
that you hit at which
where
point
you're
you
like,
become
no-
a bad person.
Well, no,
We call that the Rand coefficient.
My point isn't that. My point is that I think you probably reach a certain kind of like wealth zone where just the idea of like maintaining that wealth status / growing that wealth status is so overwhelming that like it guides all of your
Yeah,
decisions.
It bends your
basically.
psychology.
Yeah, it's a disease, I think.
I've known a few millionaires, and the one that I've known the best, or that I was closest to, one time told me this crazy story that immediately after I heard that story, I began to believe that needing to hoard wealth was a mental illness, and that was caused by trauma. Because I was in Germany with this guy, and he was like a computer programmer dude, so he had whatever Adderall or something. And there was this big, giant festival rave, and we were put up at a hotel right across the street. So, we could like just go back and forth from the room, no driving, no getting anywhere, no thinking about stuff. So we went, real hard, and it was like, 6, 7 in the morning. No, hadn't slept, but like getting real weird from all the raving, and all the drugged out raving. And we started talking, and I feel like there was 3 people just lying in a bed, fully clothed, like looking at the ceiling, talking in very low tones. And he told this story about how when his parents were getting divorced, his mom was from money, and was never allowed to carry on the family business because she's a woman, so she's still, like, today going to grad school, like serial grad schooler. And so this kid, like, he was always going to have money. Like, his grandpa was a billionaire of selling magazines to army bases or something. So he was always going to be fine. But his dad was like a chef. Like, his mom had married this kind of like more regular dude, and then they had 3 kids. And when they were getting divorced, it was weird. And he told this story about one time being in the car in the front seat, and his 2 younger siblings in the back, and they drove to the dad's house, and the dad needed to like he was supposed to sign some papers, but if he signed the papers, it was going to lead to his car getting taken away, and so he was asking for a little extra time before he signed the papers, and he started to like cry about it in front of his mom, which was like crazy to this dude, and then his mom laughed at his dad, and he like told me and this other guy this story in this bed at like 6 a.m. and it was so weird because it didn't even seem like he knew why he was telling the story, but once it came out, it was like the origin story of this millionaire. It was like from that point on, he could never ever be in that position that his dad was in.
Yeah.
Like he saw his dad become a whole new entity in a moment, and like it was clear like that was never gonna happen to this dude. And the fact that his grandpa was like full of money meant nothing at that moment. Like he could be, I mean, he was his dad. He could be his dad. That could happen to him. So he had to go and make his own millions completely unrelated to his family.
Well, I mean, I think it's obviously a generational trauma in a wealthy family. You would have that. Well, I actually have a good friend here who, his brother went to one of these. They're twins, and they apparently got in so much trouble together that they had to split them up to different high schools.
That's
But
awesome.
so he went to school for the arts, and his brother went to I don't remember which like really fancy prep school.
In here.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to school for that.
So he has they have all these different friends, but he knows all these dudes who are like businessman types, like yuppie, super like fucking the khakis with the little animals printed up, like full I don't know what do you call it?
Maryland Club.
Preppy,
Frat
like
boys.
Maryland Club. No, like my friend like goes to the Maryland Club sometimes with these dudes.
I'm jealous.
Dude, unreal. Peek into that like scene. But he said this thing that I thought was really interesting recently, because he's like it's funny because he's like this shapeshifter, master code switching person. He's an actor actually by trade, and he it's like crazy because he's a total freak, but can seamlessly just go into the like polo shirt world. And he's like, hey bud, how you do? Like it's like crazy to bump into one of these dudes on the sidewalk with him, because he just goes into like, oh yeah, blah blah. You know, it's crazy. But he was talking about how this thing. He's like, there's this thing that no one ever talks about, which is that these rich dudes go to these fancy prep schools, and the politics that's kind of like hammered into your head is the politics of like meritocracy and like you deserve it's the politics of like you are here because you deserve to be here, and like your family like got here on their own, and like this bootstrappy kind of like thing.
It's conditioning.
Right, exactly. But they're all born rich and don't have to do shit, and it makes this like psychic like break rift thing that happens. Where he's like, and all of these dudes are like fucking alcoholics, like they commit suicide, like they're all tweaked the fuck out, and it's like an epidemic in this group of people, because they're told all the time like you earn what you deserve, and like blah blah blah, and then they don't ever earn anything. They're just born into like extreme privilege, and like they can't handle it.
And then the small handful of them that go on to become successful businessmen, you know, are the biggest proponents of that dangerous mindset.
You have to. It's like how the only way you can live in New York City is if you psychologically believe that it's the only city you could ever live in.
Right.
Because otherwise, the total shit, abject reality of your existence in New York would make you have to leave.
Only in New York.
If you're like, I have to live here, I have to subject myself to this, because this is the only place that is like the right place to live on Earth.
I feel like this is
which is psycho.
Another place in which music and band culture is really useful to us, because this plays out in such a cartoonish way with musicians and so consistently. Like the idea of like, I'm here because I earned this, and it's the proof that I earned it is that I'm here. Right. And then like if that formula is fucked with by material things that happen to you, you're lost. And you become alcoholic, or you commit suicide like so many musicians do, because your whole sense of self like goes through this weird like
absolutely. It's
explosion.
I've never been in a band, but I've been in like theater troupes and stuff, and like, you know, the role of the people and the hierarchies that happen do have like psychological effects on you. Like, oh, this is the person who does the most, who like leads the vision of it, and this is the person who's like subordinate to that, and this is the person who's subordinate to that person, like, and it is this little like microcosm of
emotional hierarchy.
Yet another strange problem that comes about from the mistaken notion that the artist owns the art.
Oh, we already had this argument. We know what sides everybody's on already.
Personally,
or even
like,
I feel like it goes
wait a
even back.
minute, you don't
It goes
think
back
when you
a step
make
that the
something
art
that
is-
God made it?
I do think that.
I loved
God
that.
made it.
I loved that argument.
But don't you feel
so
bad
much.
for Shepherd Ferry though, making that believe thing? Come on,
Wait,
that
what
art
did
belongs
Not
to
real,
him.
not real art. That's why.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Oh, Banks.
Politically
No, that totally came from
This
Banks.
art is not art. It's because it's not art.
Good art is from God. Bad art's from humans.
Yeah, I like that as a slogan.
Yeah, bad
Well,
art.
I will accept the argument that bad art is just from Apollo, who's an asshole god.
That's an asshole.
Yes.
You.
Yeah. We to the argument. No.
Or Arlen, I mean, maybe Mercury even. I feel like Mercury's the trickster and the god of merchants, and I feel like bad art is Hermes' trick to sell art.
I think Hermes' art is just kitschy niche art, though. I mean, Hermes related to all those movies.
You mean like what we make?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with that.
Appropriately.
I'm with that.
Where we are.
Exactly. That's why we invoke his name in this our temple.
Who? Gene?
No, Mercury.
Oh.
I'm a Gemini, so I'm down.
Fine.
That's my dog.
Oh, were you talking about
Merc
Mercury?
dog.
Yeah.
Merc dog.
Merc dog?
Merc dog.
Merc
Right
dog.
here.
The
Right here.
giant killer.
What?
Wow,
He's the
man,
giant killer.
this got good
Hermes
at
is the
end
giant
here.
Yeah.
1:30.
I
What
gotcha.
time do you guys have to?
Oh, we probably got
I don't
Go
have
to
to
your
I'm not going.
silly event.
We should probably start cleaning up. I do have to say
I have band practice too.
I fucked up and I missed the first hour and 40 minutes.
Oh
I
man.
didn't, YouTube did something different this time.
Oh,
I didn't
YouTube.
I didn't understand the screen I was
It
watching.
was YouTube.
I thought we were streaming. I got us in there, but at the end.
All right.
Thank
Like
you,
an hour
Ryan.
ago.
That's fine.
Well, it's like Gene Wolfe. You'll just have to guess. You know what's really good.
Oh man, there's some gold early on. That's
Yeah.
too bad.
Yeah,
There was.
that's
It
too
was
bad.
a great episode.
It
yeah,
wasn't
we got
well.
good. We got.
It wasn't really an
I,
episode.
you know what
it was good.
you know what I think it is? The combination of coffee and weed.
Ooh.
Instead
Yeah,
of
totally.
wine
Instead
and
of
weed.
wine and weed, best combination.
I did
I
all three, and I
love-
think I was.
I
You did all
prefer-
three.
If,
You're doing fine.
if we always did the morning, I'd be so
I
down.
could definitely.
Yeah.
I
do
don't
We
that.
could do 11 if the 10 is, you know.
That would be good for me.
11?
This was really intense.
Was 11?
Well, what about Saturdays? I mean, I like Sundays better, but
I don't care about
we
it.
don't work at 9 on Friday.
I have to work some Saturdays, so.
I mean Sundays.
I mean, 11 should be fine.
11 Sundays. I
Or
like
even
it.
noon, just early enough where I can drink coffee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you're not allowed to drink coffee after noon? I drink
No.
coffee whenever
No,
I
I no,
want.
I could,
Privilege!
no. I could drink coffee whenever I want. I just choose not to because I like to go to bed early.
Different kind of privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
different.
can't drink coffee.
Yeah, I work very early in the morning and you work very late at night.
And also sometimes early in the morning.
Yeah.
What's early?
Should I
have to be
stop the
working
show?
9.
Oh,
yeah, bye.
I-
Sorry, I
Definitely.
messed up at the
Bye.
beginning, guys.
The latest
We don't
I
mind.
ever work is 8.